Out for the meeting.
Let me reword my question a different way, just one third right.
Still got Will and Kevin talking.
So that was me, too.
It's me too.
Okay, there we go. Whoa. That was turned up. All right, if everybody can please take a seat so we can get started this evening. Oh, good luck, Will.
Will, entering the ring.
All right, for those of you who have never been before, this is not our usual setup. So here we are on a Tuesday evening, and we're going to be very close tonight. So with that, TALC has a mic to pass around. You won't be, Elizabeth and won't be able to run around and give you mics. So, and district has their own mic. So, yep. So who would like to start check-in? And I don't know the best place to put this chart so you can see it. Those here will have to just turn around, I guess.
I'll start.
All right. Thank you, Rob.
You're welcome. Thank you for all being here, and sorry about the tight quarters, everyone. So maybe we'll get a better agreement because of it. I'm Robert Dodig. I'm Robert Dodig. I'm well. I have no time constraints. Missing, we have Dr. Cole and Dr. Duncan that aren't here currently. I have no elephants, and expectation would be to make significant progress this evening.
I'm Will Rothenberg. I'm the Director of Compensation Labor Relations. I'm doing well. A little bit congested still, but more appreciative of what everyone goes through as children all converge in a small place for long hours. No time constraints. Missing, I think, is noted. No elephants, and expectation, make progress. Significant progress. Yeah. Significant.
Good afternoon, I'm Ben. I'm doing great. I have no time constraints. Missing is noted. I have no elephants. And we'll make significant progress tonight.
Hey, I'm Carl, high school rep from Dunbar High School. I'm doing fine. No time constraints. I think who's missing's been noted on the district side. No elephants, and let's make significant progress.
I'll trade you right here. Hello, I'm Kevin Kelfie, the payroll director. I just want to let everybody know it's Payroll Appreciation Week. So if you talk to someone, please. There's a lot of men and women in the background making sure everybody gets paid. I have no time constraints. Missing has been noted. No elephants, and expectations are to make significant progress.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Amy Desamore, and I'm the Chief Financial Officer. I'm fine. No time constraints, no elephants, and my expectations are that we make progress.
Good evening. I'm Heather Leonard, the Director of Staffing and Talent Management. I'm doing well this evening. I don't have any time constraints and no elephants, and expectations would to make significant progress.
I'm Shanna Johnston, and I'm representing Academic Services. I am doing great. No time constraints, missing is noted, no elephants, and expectation is to make significant progress.
Use that one. Or I can use yours. True. Jonathan Tuttle. I'm with FEA Bargaining Specialist for the Southern Region. I'm doing pretty well. I happen to have 2 torn contact lenses this evening, though. It's pretty uncomfortable. Maybe that's an elephant, too. I don't know. No real time constraints other than pain. And my expectations, I hope to learn a lot tonight. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kevin Daly. I'm the president of TALC. I am fine. I have no time constraints. Missing will kind of become apparent. No elephants. Expectation to make progress.
I'm Jill Castellano, the Vice President of TALC and a teacher at Cypress Lake Middle School. I'm doing quite well. No time constraints. Missing has been noted. No elephants. Make significant progress.
Hello, my name is Anna Witten. I am the secretary for TALC as well as a fourth grade reading teacher at Franklin Park Elementary. I am doing well. Missing has been noted. No time constraint, no elephants, and expectation is to make progress.
Good afternoon. My name is Shay Pearson. I am a testing coordinator at Island Coast High School. I am also the TALC treasurer. I'm doing well. I have no time constraints. I think we need to add Kerr Fazone on there as missing. I mean, he did send a replacement, but he is not here. I have no elephants. And I did miss the first bargaining, so my expectation is to get a clear picture of budget.
Good afternoon. My name is Amy Johnson. I am a 6th grade ELA teacher at Mariner Middle School. I am doing well. I have no time constraints. Missing is noted. No elephants. Expectation will be make significant progress. Make easy for Amy.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Iris Grimaldi. I am a school social worker currently assigned at Lehigh Senior High School. I'm doing well. I have no time constraints. Missing has been noted. No elephants, and my expectations are to make significant progress.
Good evening, Mario Dorstal, mathematics teacher at Suffolk Myers High School. I'm doing well. I have no time constraints. Missing's been noted, no elephant, and I'd like to make significant progress.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Louis Fisher. I'm the director of bands at Gateway High School. I'm doing fine. I have no time constraints. Missing has been noted, no elephants, and my expectations to make significant progress.
Good afternoon. I'm Christina Starrett. I'm a K-5 art teacher at Tortuga Preserve Elementary. Doing well. No time constraints. Missing's noted. No elephants, and make significant progress, please.
Good evening. My name is LaShonda Hutchins Cologne, and I'm the grade 3 through 5 math coach at Franklin Park Elementary. And I'm not doing too shabby. No time constraints. Missing is noted. No elephants, and expectations is to make significant progress.
Hi, I'm Heather Rodriguez Wibbles. I am a school counselor at Calusa Middle School. I am fine. I have no time constraints. I notice everyone who's missing. I have no elephants, and my expectation is to make significant progress and learn where we're at.
Course McIntosh from the office. I'm assistant school board attorney from the Office of Legal Services with the district. I have no time restraints. I'm doing fine. Missing is noted. No elephants, and expectations to make significant progress.
Good afternoon, Mike Robichaud, Director of Insurance and Benefits Management. Missing has been noted. I'm doing well. No elephants in the room, and go with making significant progress.
Good afternoon. My name is Suzette Rivera. I'm the Director for Recruitment. I'm doing well. No time constraints. Missing has been noted. No elephants, and my expectations are to make significant progress.
Good afternoon. My name is Helen Martin. I'm the Director of Professional Development. I'm doing well. I have no time constraints. Missing has been noted. I have no elephants, and expectations are to make significant progress.
Hi, I'm Mike Gaywood, Director of Internal Auditing. I'm doing great. I have no time constraints. Missing's noted. No elephants. Expectation, make significant progress.
Got everybody around the table, so Amy?
Okay. My name is Amy French. I'm doing well. I do not have any time constraints. Donna and I are both here. There are no elephants. My expectations are to help you meet all of these, and I want to point out that it's ironic that Payroll Appreciation Week falls on Kevin's birthday.
Thank you, Amy, and happy birthday, Kevin. And I'm Donna Mutzenard. I'm doing well, no time constraints. Missing's been noted, no elephants. Expectations are the same as Amy to help you reach some of these expectations. You did receive minutes from our last meeting, and does anybody have any, I'm not sure where we're going to hang charts this year, right now.
On the chairs, maybe?
Drape them over the chairs. Well, the welcome doesn't really have to be posted, because we don't have anybody that's coming in late that would have to do it. Okay, let's get minutes corrections. Amy? Hold mute, and you'll see the green light come on.
Oh, woo, that's loud. Go to page 2, bullet number 4. Okay, all right. Oh, Pearl's back there too, that's right. Bereavement should not be capitalized. Under caucus, the second sentence under district report out, the district is not opposed to either item. Under TALC report out, bereavement is capitalized, should not be. It's not Henry County, it's Hendry. Okay. All right. And then county should be capitalized. On page 3, bullet 4, there were a lot of discussions about certain administrator salary increases instead of in. Bullet number 5, other options to teaching. If anybody else has some, I can share. Number 7, bullet number 7, we have not yet been able and I don't reflect what would be as a portion of, I wasn't sure how to rephrase that. Bullet number 7, reflect what would be as a portion of starting pay. It doesn't sound right, and I'm not sure what, the clarity isn't there, and I'm not sure what it was supposed to say. Yes. Uh-huh. Yes. Reflect is in the second line about halfway through. Maybe get rid of the word as. What would be a portion of starting pay? Did you find it, Will? Yeah. Okay, all right. All right. That could be. All right, bullet number 9. There have been teachers who were unable to cover their housing cost or provide their families with food. There were an overwhelming. And then bullet number 10. TISA money, I know we say TISA, but isn't it TSIA? All right. I know right, TSIA, right. And then it should be after the third line of that, money can be used to increase, maybe, the latter end of the salary schedule. It's in between 2 and the. Bullet 11, 1, 2, 3, third line down after the period it says charters and it has an apostrophe after the S. It doesn't need to be there. Bullet number 12, I think the word is needs to be after 7.5 million that is funded by TISA. Page 4. Under district report out, it says review any restrictions that the TISA funds may accompany. Maybe it should be that may accompany the TISA funds. I think it just is clear. Restrictions that may accompany the TISA funds. Yep, just move the. All right, and then under story, bullet number 2, it's just the commas in between entered this year do not need to be there. And then bullet number 3, ESSER funding is exhausted. We are all exhausted, so already. Bullet number 4, the insurance task force did a great job, so job just needs to be inserted. And then the bullet number 5, let's see, it's a language how this money will, how this money will and can be spent. So we just needed the word and, carried it in there. And I think that's it.
Anna?
All right, so back at the top, under, I'm on my phone, so it's the very, very top, so page 1. There's no page numbers on my phone. It says, I lost it. Oh, it says the, I don't even know. Now I'm confused. Anyways, going down to the, take this back. The TALC report out for the caucus underneath Article 10, it says that, like on line 5, it says Henry instead of Hendry County. Oh, okay. And then I'm going to stop.
Jill?
On page 2, under TALC report out, underline, it should be the 3rd line. It says there's no physical impact. That should say fiscal. So we need to switch physical to fiscal.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Okay, anything else? Anna?
Top of page 2, underneath story for Article 12, the second bullet, it says compassionate leave are other contracts, are in other contracts. It just says are other contracts.
Well, if contracts is plural, then it should.
Yeah, compassionate leave is in other contracts and not in TALC contract.
Can answer the question. Is there an English teacher back there? Is it R? It is.
It is.
All right, any other corrections, deletions from the minutes? With that, can I see some thumbs for approval of the minutes with the corrections? Thank you very much. The next thing on the agenda is Article 12, domestic violence and compassionate. Is that where you want to begin, or Rob? Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. So last meeting, we indicated we supported both of these, and that's still the case. So the district, I guess I'm on to options. And I don't know what options were put up there.
I think we probably had enough story last time anyway, so.
Okay, all right. So we have no objection to the domestic violence language as it was originally written. Would like to make an option regarding compassionate leave, which is paragraph H in the draft. And as follows, delete the first sentence that talks about the loss of a pregnancy. And then at the end, add language, and I'm just going to read it, but then we can go through it so they can write it if they need to. Existing sick leave shall be used for compassionate leave. In the event the employee does not have accrued sick leave available, the compassionate leave shall be leave without pay, without any penalty to the employee. So those would be our options.
Okay.
So I'm going to actually write these as options then?
Yes.
Okay. So I have no objection to domestic violence leave as
Yeah, just leave the language the way it was drafted, correct?
Okay, go to the next one now. Thank you.
And basically for compassionate leave, delete the first sentence in the draft.
Okay.
And then add a sentence at the end that sick leave shall be used. If no sick leave, then leave without pay. I understand what it means. So we understand what it means. I don't want you to write the whole thing.
No penalty to the employee.
Correct.
Okay. Anna?
Do we have a copy of the draft language?
The original draft language, yes. Will sent that, I think, a while ago. Did you send? We sent that to them. Yeah, in April. It hasn't changed since then, other than what I just changed up there.
Kevin?
Will you be making the same changes to the administrator and Schedule N contracts?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Any other questions or clarifications needed? Any other options? Okay. Anything else? Anybody want to suggest a straw design? Anybody want to call a caucus so they can discuss this? Because that's what's happening right now. All right, Anna?
I just have a question. Looking at the domestic violence language, it says that in order to be eligible, you have to be an employee for 3 months with the district. Is there a reason for that?
think that's statutory. Yeah, I think that's in the statute.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Amy? No, hold on.
I wanted to ask if there's a reason you're taking out the pregnancy portion of it. Is it just because any compassionate leave, it doesn't have to just be about the pregnancy?
No, it's just stylistic taking out that first sentence. That's all. It's still
So it would start
it's
with,
about loss of pregnancies. Yes.
so it would
It's
start with
just-
employees are entitled to leave for 10 working days.
Correct.
That would all say there.
Right.
Right.
We just don't have other language like that in the contract that
Right.
states kind of a
Right.
makes
Emotional
a
tone.
statement.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Go ahead, Heather. Have to hold the mute button.
My question looking at this is about when you say the threat assessment, who all is on the district threat assessment team and what is done with that information? It's under the domestic violence section.
I can do my best to try and answer that. I know that there are, the same as at schools, there's representatives from district safety and security. There's mental health people on the team, and I think law enforcement. The particular situation that comes to mind where that happened already was there was an issue with a domestic violence situation and threats that carried over to the workplace. And so there was the need to make sure that the person that was affected was safe and that there wasn't any threat of violence at their work site. And so by them kind of disclosing to the district that, they were having the situation at home and they were, seeking assistance with that, it allowed the district to help take precautionary steps to make sure that, their personal outside of work issue didn't become an issue for them elsewhere in life.
Is that housed in the same system we use for students with Navigate, or is that just internally as a district we're looking at what we do or how?
I'm not exactly sure on that. because there's obviously some differences, and some of it would depend on whether, I guess, like who it is that is presenting the threatening behaviors. If it's a student, obviously we have to keep different records than if it's someone that's an employee, a member of the public, that sort of thing.
When we're looking at the domestic violence language, is that with pay or without pay? It doesn't state there.
It's essentially the same situation. If you have sick leave, it would be with pay, and if you don't, then it would be leave without pay. It's not a new, as Kevin said, I think last meeting, a new pot of leave, so to speak.
Thank you.
Hey, Anna. Get on there.
So would this be an option that employees put in PeopleSoft? Of like the drop-down box, is that going to be there?
Yeah, that would be the plan, yes.
Okay, and the same thing with the compassionate leave? That would be an option when
I know
putting
Kevin's going to
in-
have some privacy concerns, and I do too. So
Yeah.
we'll have to figure that out. I mean,
Okay.
implementation of it would have to be figured out to protect someone's
Yeah,
privacy.
my only concern is public record on stuff like that. Okay.
I think, like Rob was saying, that's probably more of an implementation question. I do know, again, thinking of kind of recent past situations where we have done stuff like this, there have even been situations where I think it's been kind of disclosed verbally that someone was trying to figure out how to navigate, to request this type of leave. And I can say it was helpful in not only, I think, making sure that that leave was available for them, but also making sure that, again, since it protects household members as well, that if it's someone's child who is the victim, that then we're made aware and can kind of figure out, okay, is the child a student at a school within the district, and do we need to make sure that appropriate people are made aware to provide support services to that student as well. And I know, without saying much more, there are already instances where we've had to do that and help direct people towards that. So,
Jill.
And I think I know the answer to this, but is the 3 working days in a 12-month period, is that statutory? I was just making sure, because I was reading at the same time, so I missed a few things. If a teacher needed more than 3 days and they have leave built up, can they request more days under this provision if they need it? Like if 3 days is not enough to relocate, or are there ways that we can still support them in this process? If they work with their building administrator, obviously.
I would think so, yes. And also, they still have their personal days also. We've agreed on 6, so we've added that extra day. So, yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Clarifications needed?
Donna, I would, are those numbered 1 and 2, I guess?
Yes, they are.
So I would propose a straw design of options 1 and 2.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments, clarifications needed, or can we, anybody have any new options, or can we go ahead and vote on the straw design? I don't see any hands going up anywhere.
I just want to make sure they're comfortable because I know a couple of them are still right in front of me working. So I'm not trying to stop you. I just want to make sure you're okay. We already
That
agreed
was
to
prior
that
to this.
before summer break.
All right, anybody else?
Option 1 says no objection to the domestic violence leave as it's been drafted. And option 2, compassionate leave, will delete the first sentence in the draft and will add sick leave shall be used. If no sick leave, then leave without pay with no penalty to the employee will be added.
Do we want to add information about if the 3 days is not enough, or, I mean, that would clarify it for any administrator that would say no?
I don't necessarily want to amend the straw design. I think it's been captured here, so I'm comfortable with it being in the minutes.
That could also be part of the implementation process when you discuss that, too, that to make administrators aware. So, do we want to vote on the straw design, or are there any more questions, clarifications? Want to test it? All right, I need to see thumbs if you're in favor of the straw design for bereavement and compassionate leave. Sorry, the domestic violence and all right, we have our first agreement. All right, yes, Will.
Can I just thank everyone for us finally putting Article 12 to rest?
It is?
This has been, I think, 3 years in the making. Also, the domestic violence, sexual violence, and compassionate leave are big things that, as we were at the outset of the pandemic, were HR best practice recommendations for all employers, but especially employers with a majority of employees who are female, because those are obviously issues that disproportionately impact female employees. So just wanted to, again, thank you guys for kind of going with us on that journey and getting that across the line.
All right, thank you, everybody. And with that, the next thing on our agenda is compensation. And I do believe Amy has a presentation tonight, if you want to see that first before we dive into it. Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah, Donna, the vantage point for TALC is not that great, so I don't know if folks want to go sit out in the auditorium or if you're comfortable where you are. Okay, all right. We just want to make sure you could see okay.
Could you put that in a near pop, please?
All right, are you ready, Amy? Are we ready to get the PowerPoint up there, Kevin? Great. Yeah, she may need the mic. Then there's a little bit
Now
of
we're
a time
good, yeah.
delay.
Awesome. Thank you, Kevin, for helping me navigate the PowerPoint tonight. So we wanted to start out the information with just acknowledging some of the information that we had talked about, some of the story that we had talked about. It's in the minutes from the last meeting that we had, and then also it's reflected in the minutes that happened before, you know, and last year through April. And I think we all know this and we've all been feeling it. So, you know, our story collectively as a district in this talk, you know, really speaks to all employees where the cost of living in our area has been steadily rising and everybody's feeling the impacts of that. And workload is rising due to the increasing requirements, vacancies that we have, turnover that we have. These are all things that you all expressed that all employees have expressed. And beyond just the things that have happened in the workplace as well, employees have had hardships, not just professionally, but personally as well. And that comes with some of the things that have happened to us, to the nation, to the world over the past several years, right? So there's a growing frustration, I think, of us losing employees, and that has to do with a lot of things, compensation and conditions being amongst some of those things. And so, and then last but certainly not least, Hurricane Ian, and, you know, enough said related to that. So all of those things together really speak to all of the hardships, both personally and professionally, that employees have had. And these past at least 3 years have been something for us collectively. Those challenges just keep coming. And so we thought that it was important as we started our conversation today to just recognize that as a group, that has been what has happened, and that's where we are collectively as a group as we go into this conversation. So then, but also related to that story is over 100,000 students this year. So believe it or not, for those of us who have been here for quite a long time, knowing that now this year we're over 100,000 students is a phenomenal number. And we have dedicated employees that are helping, that are serving, that are being dedicated to all of those students, right? And a lot of that has to do with all of the people sitting here at this table, in the audience, and across the district that may be watching this tonight. Those dedicated employees who we continue to overcome COVID, employee shortages, hurricanes, personal hardships, and through all of that, we continue to strive for and achieve student achievement. And so that says a lot about the people, all of these people across the district, all of us, everyone here and everyone who's not here. So we talked about how the challenges keep coming, but this kind of talks about how we meet those challenges. Challenges are being met, but with more work to do. So when we talk tonight about what compensation brings to us, it is around the interests, in which those interests are common. Those are the interests that we collectively have agreed on. And it speaks to all of the things that the story spoke to, right? That what that brings us to, all of the things that we've gone through, all of the frustrations employees feel, all of the accomplishments that we've had. We have a great interest together and collectively of working on employee retention. We want to keep the people that we have because we have so much vested in the district. They have so much time and dedication vested in our employees. It is also important that we recruit new employees because those vacancies that we have take a toll on the system, on each of us individually and collectively. Equity is important, as we have talked about, in terms of compensating all of our employees equitably in terms of how we define that in the system. And then employee morale, because we know that we have some work to do there. And even though, you know, compensation is not the only thing that speaks to employee morale, it certainly is a very important thing that speaks to employee morale. So we are working together towards those same goals that we did define together and that we all collectively agree upon based on where our journey to this point has taken us. So let's talk a little bit about the state education budget, right? This is where I'm going to start talking about a lot of numbers. So hang in there with me. I'm going to try to make it as exciting as possible. So for this year, so for this fiscal year 24, the state allocated Lee County in our state education budget, or what you also will hear me refer to as the FEFP, or the Florida Education Finance Program, a little over $928 million. And that is of course our initial allocation from the state. It can change as we go along, but that's what we have right now. And that includes an increase in, say, unweighted FTE, or that is the students that we have in the district, of almost 4,400 students. So that is a large increase, but that increase also includes about 1,100 students, or FTE, that the state is estimating will be added because of the family empowerment scholarships. So understanding that that increase of students aren't necessarily students who are going to, all of them aren't the ones who are going to be here being served in our traditional schools. That also includes any increase in charter students, and it also includes almost 1,100 kids estimated at this point that will be taking advantage of the Family Empowerment Scholarship. And that is, for those who may not be familiar with it by this name, is that funding that the state gives, and then parents can use that money to have their kids and pay for their kids to attend private institutions. So that is the Family Empowerment Scholarship. Also, so in that state education budget, that included an increase in the BSA, or that is the base student allocation. We get a certain amount of money for every kid, right? So it included that increased the base student allocation by a little over $552 increase. So on its face, that's a pretty large increase, but let's break it down a little bit so that we can talk about what that increase is and what it's really not. So that $552 was the increase to the base student allocation. However, in the state's allocation this year, what they did was they took some money that used to be set aside specifically in the budget for certain reasons, and they just took that and included all those pots of money into the base student allocation instead of separating them out as they had previously done. So the district used to get money, or every district, because it's not just us, it's everybody, right? But the district used to receive specific money set aside for reading instruction, called the reading categorical. We no longer receive that money separately. They rolled it up into the base student allocation. Instructional materials. We used to receive separate money for instruction and materials. We no longer receive separate money for that. It's rolled up into the base student allocation. Same thing for the teacher salary allocation, which you all are very familiar with. Used to be its own separate pot of money. It's rolled into the base student allocation now. And the same thing for the teacher classroom supply allocation. However, the requirements still remain the same, right? We still need instructional materials. We still have to allocate a certain amount of money for teacher salary allocation. We still have to comply with the teacher classroom supply money. And so those things are not free money to us. They have to come out of that base student allocation to make sure that we are accounting for those requirements that we have. So when you take that, wait, before you leave that one. So when you take that base student allocation of $552, but then you back out all of those things that are now in the base student allocation, but that we are still responsible for, that used to be a categorical, that increase to the base turned out to be really something that looks like $119 as opposed to the $552. So just thought it important that we visit that information and really break down what it means and what it doesn't mean, because that's an important distinction that I think there was, you heard a lot, or at least will hear a lot, about that increase in the base student allocation. Well, it was, but it wasn't. And I think it's important to understand that. So, in the FEFP, again, the funding increase between last year and this year, or between 23 and 24, was about $72.9 million. So that total of $928 million that we had was really a $72.9 million increase from the last year. And we will make sure that you all get a copy of this, right? So just want to make sure that you knew you're going to have a copy of this PowerPoint. You'll have to furiously try to write these, because we'll get them to you. So inside of that increase to the FEFP, certain things have to come out of it. We have to account for certain things. First of all, we had to account for the teacher salary increase. In the FEFP rules, there were rules about how much of that increase had to be taken out and used for the teacher salary increase for this current year. And that rule for us is going to be about $7.5 million. Then we had, in that increase of $72.9 million, there was some other categoricals that were in there, or that is funds that are restricted in terms of how they can be used, so kind of backing that out. Then you also have the money that's going to charter schools, like the pass-through to them, that goes directly to charter schools, and that of that increase, there are about $5.3 million of it. There's the Family Empowerment Scholarship. So again, that money that is allocated by the state, but then it goes directly to parents who are choosing to take their kids to a private school option. That's at about $13.9 million of that increase estimated. And then, according to the rules of the road, we have to maintain contingency at 3% of new revenue. So we had to increase that contingency. So after we back out all of those things, the projected increase in unrestricted revenue, after we account for all of these things, stands at about $41.9 million after we accounted for those things. Then let's go to the next steps. When we were originally formulating the budget, I'm just taking you through kind of a story of where we were at certain points in time. So when we were formulating the budget in June, this was early June, we also knew there were other things that we had to account for. First of all, our growth in our traditional schools. If that increase included increase in new students, then we have to provide certain things at all the locations for those new students. So estimated at almost $16 million. There was an increase in the Florida retirement system rate. So when we calculated that increased cost for all of our employees, that's about $8.3 million. And then, as you all are very aware of, the board and the unions collaborated, our teams collaborated to make some very important changes in the structure of our health insurance coverage. So the increase in the amount that the board provided for dependent care coverage, went up to at a cost of about $10.9 million. And then the board share, or the amount that the board contributes for employee-only health insurance, also increased at a total cost of about $8.3 million, which of course has to be calculated in this year's budget. And then at that point, we were also forecasting a property insurance increase of about $12 million. So at that point, total increased cost to the budget, just based on those things, were about $55.5 million. And so when you look at that point, and like I said, this was about early June,
that total projected new revenue from the state of $72.9 million. We back out those things of the adjustments for the restricted funds and also the projected new cost that we went through. And at that point, we had a projected budget shortfall of about $13.6 million. With still some things unknown, what for potential salary increases and what for potential FEFP proration. And proration means when they come back and get money that was originally promised to you, right? That's what the proration means. So we have to account for that, or have to make sure to plan for that if the state at any point in time would come back and say, okay, we know we allocated funds, but we cannot support the total allocation of those funds, so we have to prorate you, or some of that money has to come back to us because we can't necessarily afford to fund the whole allocation across the state. And we plan for those prorations because, in fact, they have happened every year for at least the past 6. So we plan for those. So, but that was early June, and then some additional things happened between June and where we sit today, right? So with that projected budget shortfall of $13.6 million, our property insurance estimates then came, and we were able to finalize those, right? Those came into play. Thank goodness that they weren't as much of an increase as we had originally planned. It turned out to be more of a $5 million increase as opposed to a $12 million increase. So, so that gave us $7.1 million back in the budget planning that we had. We were able to analyze some expenses and move them to different revenue sources to better utilize the money that we have in the general fund. So that was a savings of about $3.4 million. We also revised our salary budgets, right? Or what you will commonly hear me and others in the financial area refer to as LAPS. And that means if those positions in the budget that are going to be vacant. So we don't think we're going to spend that money. We budgeted for a position, but it's going to be vacant for one, some, or all of the days of the year. And so we were able to revise our salary budgets for that. And then we got a second calculation from the state. So once the tax rolls are finalized in July, they do a second calculation and they give us a revised FEFP calculation. In that revised FEFP calculation, we ended up receiving about another $4.3 million in revenue because of the revision of the FEFP and the tax roll. So with all of those changes that took place there, we were able to basically balance a budget at that point with some funds remaining of about $6 million. So that was the process that we kind of went through in a nutshell of trying to balance the budget at that point. So just for, sorry that this writing is a little bit small, but when you get the copy of the PowerPoint, you'll be able to see it much better. Just wanted to give some story or overview of the history of what the salary increases have been over time. That is of the last 3 years. Just to recap where we've been. There's been, as everyone knows, a significant minimum salary increase for teachers. That was a total of $7,750 over the past 3 years to bring us to our current minimum salary of $48,250. Was that commentary? That was commentary from the gallery. So, yay. No, that's fine. No, that was fun. It adds some color to probably what might be getting a little monotonous. So there was also a comparable increase to the minimums for special instructional staff as well. Those people who were defined as special instructional in the contract. There were market adjustments and increases for all other teachers. Career ladder also happened in each of those years, people's movement on the career ladder at $1,000 in each of those years. And then there were also various bonuses in FY22 and FY23. And if one were eligible for each of those, it was a maximum of $7,475 over those 2 years. And then there were various longevity increases, I believe a combination of 2 that led us to where we are today in terms of the different levels and amounts of longevity, which increased significantly. And then the other additional funds for the class coverage. So that's just a history of some of the things that have happened over the past several years as we have worked together to try to address what the, what we knew the pain points were and what we tried to accomplish in terms of trying to recruit and trying to retain all of our employees and provide for an equitable and competitive salary schedule. And then the benefit increases that we talked about as well, the board contribution for employees increasing over the past several years to try to make sure that in most cases that employee cost as far as the premium is concerned is at zero for most people. And then the big move from last year that went into effect this plan year in terms of contributing that $4,000 to employees for those that choose into dependent coverage. And that was a big deal for employees who had that coverage in terms of saving a significant amount of money. So all good things, but our goal, of course, here together is to do more. So the future goals that we have, and I just want to speak to the salary study plan that we have going now. We talked about that in the SPALC bargaining unit before, but I'm not sure if this group has heard so much about it. We currently do have an RFP or request for proposal, a competitive solicitation to get a third party in order to conduct a salary schedule study, right? A plan to look at our salary schedules, analyze them, and then give us recommendations in terms of structure of salary schedule to address the issues that we would like for them to address and that we define for them to address, but that we know of to be equity, the compression of the salary schedule study, recruitment of new employees and retention, that is competitiveness with our neighbors and other competitors around the state and hopefully the nation, and of course retention of our current employees inside of that same salary schedule, because the competition is for everyone. When we say competitive, we have to stay competitive in order to attract new people and stay competitive to keep our people who are already here. So that is trying to get and stay competitive to address all of those things. That salary schedule study, we have received proposals back for those already, and then there is a group, a committee that actually meets tomorrow to talk about those solicitations or the responses that we received and determine how we move forward in terms of choosing a particular third party to help us with that study. Now, and admittedly, that study will affect other salary schedules outside of necessarily this one, and SPALC and admin would be the main recipients of that, because we know with our teachers there's a lot of rules, regulations surrounding what has happened over the past couple of years that the state has put into play. However, one of the things that we did ask for from each of those people in the salary schedule study is to also include the TALC salary schedule as its own separate group, so we can also have proposals there as well. We've done things, but that doesn't mean that we couldn't possibly get recommendations to do different things or other things to address our issues differently than what we have. So that is something that is in the works right now. I want to make sure that we had an opportunity to discuss. And then, which brings us to then, all of that being said and all that story being told, the board authority for the TALC bargaining unit. We discussed at the last meeting, but based on the information that we just showed throughout the budget and also what we wanted to accomplish, the board has given authority for $16.4 million to be put inside the TALC salary schedule, which includes the TSIA amount of the $7.5 million, $16.4 million in total. And so those two things, when we talked about the budget balancing, and so that was like $6 million that we had kind of in excess, I'll say, but this is a $16.4 million number. But that is because we understand that there is a great interest in trying to make sure that we are as competitive as we can be with our salary schedule. Some of that might have necessitate us to dip in to what would have been some reserve in order to get to that $16.4 million, possibly. But we've weighed out the things that we have in play, not just for this current year, FY24, but also looking ahead to the things that we know that we have to balance in the budget over the next several years, because a budget is a short and a long-term look. And based on those two things, the $16.4 million is what we received the board authority for in order to continue our discussions on compensation and come up with the best options that we can related to those dollar amounts. So I'm going to stop right there. I think I saw a hand come up with a question.
There are lots of questions, and there's a lot of information to digest here, but all right, Jill?
I have some questions about the independent study. So we're going to hire a firm to come in and evaluate our salary schedules. Is that because we don't have people on staff who are able to go in and see all of the issues that we're hoping to find?
So we have people on staff that are in compensation, but it's a smaller staff, and the people that we are bringing in will help us do some deeper analysis, hopefully in a shorter period of time, with the resources that they bring in to help with that work, augment the people that we have here on staff.
Okay, and so do we have we do have an RFP, so we're looking for companies to give us cost. I know you mentioned that they'll be looking over the TALC contract. So will Kevin and Kerr, our chief negotiator and president, be involved in that process and in those meetings? Are they included in that?
Yeah, it's an option to do so. So it's an option to do so. What we asked for each of them in their proposals was give us an option of how you would go forward doing the work for each of the salary schedules, so that then we'd have a buffet, so to speak, of different services to choose from, and we can choose or not choose to do certain things. If we choose to do, based on the information that they give us and what we believe that like the cost benefit would be of certain things, if we choose to say, okay, yeah, we want to engage them on a TALC salary study as well, then yes, all of the stakeholders would be involved in the process. I can't necessarily speak to what that process is, because that was one of the things we were asking for in their proposal. Propose to us what your process would look like, what it, who it would be, how you would involve our employees and our stakeholders, and how it would go down. So exactly what that process would look like, I couldn't tell you until we were able to determine who it was that we were going to work with to do that.
And then is there a budget that the district has? Because if we're putting out bids, what's the budget for the independent consultant? Do we know that?
I don't know it off the top of my head, but I sure could tell you. I sure could get it for you and tell you. I know that we did set aside a certain amount for it, and I just don't remember off the top of my head what it was.
Are the recommendations of the independent group binding? So let's say they come back and say, you know what, this compression is screwed up and you need to give everybody $7,000. Is that binding? Or do we just go, thanks for the suggestion, we don't have it, too bad?
So thank you for the question.
Yes.
So when you so when you say binding, the third party's recommendation is just that, a recommendation. Then what happens is the school district has to go throughout a plan of determining what we can implement and how we implement it. It doesn't mean that it's going to be, okay, we implement this in 5 minutes. Depending on what they give us, it could be a 1-year plan, it could be a 2-year plan, it could be a 3-year plan, so, or something else. So until we get that information, it's hard to say, but the district must implement the plan as we agreed to, and all of those things would be subject to our bargaining process, basically.
All right, who's next? Shay?
So what line item on the budget is this money coming from to pay this third party?
It would come from a consultants.
Okay, and what would the time frame be? You said that it would be shorter, that you have people that can do this, but this would be quicker, I think was the word you used.
Well, they would have more resources to put into it to help augment the resources we have for it to be faster than what we could do on our own. But again, I don't know until we receive the proposals back and be able to see the information that they put in there and who we end up going with. The timeline for each of them could be different. So until we open their proposals and talk about it as the group, I don't know what the timelines are. They're proposing those to us based on their approach to the project and whatever process they feel like they need to follow based on our information.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Kevin?
All right, so I almost feel like I owe you money working for the district after that presentation. All right, so the good news is the AFRs are posted for tomorrow night, and so is the budget. So I have some questions on the AFR. So under instructional salary, you budgeted $618,456,270. According to the report you filed with the state, you only spent $548,470,432 for a net difference of $77.6 million. So I know last time at the bargaining session, I asked if there was any interest on the district side of continuing the bonus. And by the way, bonuses and coverage money is not salary, so it probably shouldn't be up there for salary. Bonuses are bonuses, and coverage is work that people have to do because you can't staff schools. Just an aside. So is there interest? I mean, I think you guys to ask the question about if there's interest in tapping into that $77.6 million to pay bonuses to people because we can't hire enough teachers. So feel free to answer that one first.
First, Kevin, could you explain for people out there what
So
the
yeah,
AFR
so
is?
the AFR is the annual financial report. It's going before the board tomorrow night. It's the report the district is required to file with the state. Like all of us, we have a household budget, but our spending rarely matches the budget exactly. So this is the budget, kind of any adjustments that were made, and the actual dollars amount spent given to the state. So it's on board docs tonight. It'll be probably on the DOE site next week. So is that good enough?
Thank you.
Yep.
Yep, perfect. All right, Amy?
So I heard one question in that, so if I missed one, tell me, but the question is there an appetite for bonuses? And the bargaining authority that we have at this point is what we have, and there's an appetite to do whatever the committee thinks is best with that. I don't know, Rob, if you wanted to add anything to that.
I specifically asked last time for you to ask the board if they had any appetite of tapping into that $77.6 million that the board gives you to pay teachers and staff to educate the children of Lee County.
Appreciate that you asked that last session.
Then answer it.
Oh, yes, sorry. She asked you to get the mic to repeat that. Okay. So I think just to be sure of what the deal is too, just want to make the point of two different things. So first of all, for the salary study that we've talked about, now remember I said that we're getting information from those third parties for all of the information, just, you know, their proposals and what they think they could do or the benefits for each of the salary schedules. What we do with those and how and when we move forward, and if we move forward, is still yet to be determined. So that hasn't to be determined yet. So I just wanted to make sure that we were clear on that. The next steps to that are still yet to be defined, if there are any next steps, and for which salary schedules. So that's number one. Number two, there's a couple things that you have to weigh out, or at least to analyze in terms of the information of the AFR, or the annual financial report. There is one particular line that you called out, which was the teacher salary amount. But when you're analyzing the funds themselves, then you have to look at the funds in totality. So whether one particular line item was underspent might be counteracted or balanced off by something else that budgets have to be increased in order to be able to cover higher expenses than what had been originally thought of. So when the board would look, or when anyone would look at the annual financial report, or the availability of doing certain things, it would not be one line item one would analyze to determine whether that could be done or not. It would be the report in its totality and in its pieces, because there are many pieces of information on that, including how the funds break out by fund, and then how they break out in total.
I'm glad you asked that, because looking at that whole block in the AFR, there is not a single item you over budgeted. In fact, there's only one item that had no money in it, and that is food service. And in total, at the end of the budget, you budgeted a fund balance of $41.3 million. And then in your AFR, you reported a fund budget of $152.9 million. So that means that over the entirety of the report, there was a $189 million difference in what you budgeted and what you actually had at the end of the year, correct? So I think the totality argument of me looking for lines to make up that 77 million isn't necessarily there.
Oh, well, yes, actually it is there, because in the AFR, yes, it will be that we don't over budget, because by the state's rules, you cannot be over expended by any specific function or fund, right? Function and fund are the different ways, a couple of the different ways that the information is broken out in the AFR. And so budget amendments have to happen monthly, daily, really, in order to make sure that we are moving from one place to another in order to cover. So while you don't necessarily see that an amendment was made, because at the end of the day, this is the report at the end of the day. In fact, amendments are made literally daily in order to revise what original estimations or allocations were, in order to make sure we are covering what we are spending.
So then you're saying that you didn't have $152.9 million left over?
Did you say billion or million?
Million.
Okay. Yes. Well, no, that I'm saying that the fund balance on the AFR shows what it is,
okay,
but the fund balance also breaks down into different parts and pieces, some of it being restricted or available for use, and others being unrestricted.
But again, when looking at the instructional block, there's not a single place where you under budgeted. Not a single line item there.
It would not,
including the adjustments. There's not a single line item there, because the middle column is for adjustments. So, I mean, it's all like public record. If I knew how to throw it up on the screen, I would. I mean, the one item is $37 million. That's, let's see, what is that? That's old eyes. That is facilities acquisition and construction. That's $37 million over budget. I mean, again, so there's not a single line item in this expenditure block where you spent more than you budgeted.
Yeah.
Doesn't this include the adjustments, though?
Correct, which is my point exactly. It will include the adjustments that have to be made over the year, and each of those adjustments
this is the
are
end of
also
the year.
public record as well.
So there are going to be more adjustments to this report covering the 22-23 school year after today, or is this the final? Right. So as of all of the adjustments, you were $77.6 million over budget in instructional salary line, correct?
In that particular line, if that's
Okay.
if that's what it
And
shows,
you were
yes, I don't have it in
and you
front
were
of me.
$100 and something million over in total.
No, when you say over, that's not necessary. If you're saying that
You
the fund
over
balance
budgeted.
is, and I don't have the report in front of me,
Okay.
but not to say that No, just because fund balance is a certain number, and I think you said $159 million, which is fine, that doesn't mean that we under budgeted, because in a district this size, there will be no year in which we expend and fund balance comes out to zero across the board in our general fund. That's irresponsible.
Right,
So to say
and
that
I understand conservative
that
budgeting.
we
That's-
under budgeted is for $159 million would not be accurate, because we have to keep a particular fund balance in order to be able to be fiscally responsible.
And that's 3%, right?
Well, no, 3% is the state's minimum. That doesn't mean that it's completely fiscally responsible to keep a 3% minimum. And in addition, the $159 million in the fund balance includes many different things, including those dollars that schools have in their budgets to carry over from one year to the next to do the things that they need to do, including funds that we may be holding back in order to create things that are happening in the long term, because a budget is not just a short term but a long term picture as well. So fund balance is what it is, yes. Not an accurate statement to say that we under budgeted $159 million.
Okay, so if I'm looking at the report, and I have one here if you'd like it, the last column is the difference, right? And so numbers in parentheses, because I'm just a lowly ESE teacher, numbers in parentheses are places where you over budget, where you under budgeted and had to spend money, correct?
Number in parentheses would equate to a negative in the report.
Right.
Yes.
Perfect, yes. All right, so if I look at this block of expenses and only see one place where there's parentheses, and that's $106,000, and that's on interest, which, you know, might make sense. Nowhere else in the block is there a number that's in parentheses. So I understand the schools have this money and the district may be holding that in, you know, in the reserve for the school, because this district maybe has to hang on to the money, but the $77.6 million isn't money from the schools that have to be held. That's money that you budgeted to pay teachers that you didn't pay teachers, correct?
It would have been, you were handing me that so I
Here.
can see it,
Would you
just to
mind
see.
sharing? Thank you.
Because I don't have it in front of me. But. So I just want to follow along with the numbers you were just saying. So go ahead. You are wanting to pull my.
No, I just need to understand the $77.6 million.
Yep.
Right?
Okay. So this is in under the category where it says instruction. Yep. Okay. So in order to understand that number, because this is in the general fund, that is in the function called instruction. This is not just salaries. This is under the function of instruction, which would be everything that we would have budgeted underneath the instructional category in order to accomplish education at schools. So in addition to salaries and benefits, it would also be material supplies, it would be consultants, it would be other services such as substitutes, it would be all of those things. So this instructional line does not just encompass those things for that were budgeted for salaries for teachers, and actually it would be all. It wouldn't just be the salaries that are in this line, and like I said, this line encompasses all of the things that are in a functional instruction, which would be salaries and all other. It would be salaries for everyone, not just teachers, but anyone else that's budgeted under this particular function called instruction.
Shay's had her hand for a while.
Before we go to John.
Okay, so I understand what you're saying about the instruction line, but if I read it correctly, the proposed was 617, we spent 548. My question, though, goes to this year's budget. I'm looking at the final budget summary that was on board docs for tomorrow night, and this year we've budgeted $692 million for instruction. So that's $75 million more than what we budgeted last year, not taking into account the fact that we didn't spend $77 million. So can you tell me where that money is being spent? if we're only offering $16 million towards salaries? Because to me, that's an excess of 150 million, give or take.
Sorry, hold on. I'm trying to pull it up. If you just give me a second. Okay, and I'm sorry, you said you were looking at.
I'm sorry, looking at the page, it says final budget summary 2023-2024, or 2023-24.
I got you.
Under part 1 operating.
Yes, I got you.
And I see under instruction, $692,744,808.
Well, so those would include anything, again, anything under the instructional function. So anything that we might be, and I don't want to say giving away, but the growth that was allocated to charter schools, some of that would be under the functional instruction. The new money that went to, or that will be going to Family Empowerment Scholarship, some of that is going to be under under the function of instruction. So everything that could be categorized as instruction or in that coded in those functions, which are actually anything in the 5,000 category, they're going to be reflected in that number. So it's not just about salaries, it's about everything, and it's all reflected there.
And I completely understand that aspect of it.
Yes, ma'am.
But what I'm saying is that last year, we didn't spend 77 million of it. This year, you're increasing it by 75 million. And in your presentation, even with the things that aren't covered, even with the increase in the base student allocation, at nowhere are we spending an extra $150 million.
No one thing
Or 75
by
million.
itself, no. No one thing by itself necessarily, but in this information that you just talked about the information that we just went through, right? In terms of some of the things that we talked about. We were pulling out the highlights there in terms of some of the things that happen. There's lots of other things that happen inside of the budget too. So this wasn't meant to be an all-inclusive look into exactly what's happening, but we did try to give the important highlights of what is happening in there. So if you're asking, what's the breakdown of that $692 million? I'm going to say we can give you the breakdown of that. And in fact, in the budget book, which might be also posted to the web at this point, or if it's not, it will be shortly, the entire budget book. It'll break down all of those numbers in that fund plus all the others as well.
Is it possible to share that with the bargaining team?
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. All right, Jonathan?
Thank you. And just so folks know what we're talking about, there are two parts to the annual financial report. They were just posted, I believe it was today, they were on the website. Well, we just saw it just before this meeting, but there are two parts. One's called ESE 145, one's called ESE 348. The document we're looking at is a very simple overview of what was budgeted at the beginning of last year, how it was amended, and what was actually spent. So when you leave here, maybe you pull it up on your phones. It's the ESE 145. It's Exhibit E1. Exhibit E1. And it's a very simple overview. But what I would like to mention, I'm sorry, were you?
No, I was just going to, we're in bargaining, so.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
It's not a presentation to the.
No, it's not.
To the audience. Thanks.
But it is kind of significant because there are some very legitimate questions being asked here. When we talk about what is budgeted and what is actually spent, and we go back year after year after year, in the previous 5 years, you've been over budgeting by $106 million on average. And I think this is important. I think this is an important part of bargaining. And for the instruction function, with all the objects included in that function, that's been over budgeted on average for the past 5 years by $39 million. So you understand it's very difficult for this team when we come sit down with you and we hear that, including TSIA at $7.5 million, we only have $16.4 million for your salary. It's a very hard thing for this team and these teachers to get their hands around after seeing it year after year after year. And I will be with the SPALC team actually on Monday night after we've had a little more time to go through these documents. Thank you.
Kevin, do you have anything else?
I think there was an interest from my team to caucus, but I think also the 348 has the breakdown. So I have that in front. Yeah, of each like 100, 200, 300, right? And so I guess the most valid comparison would be what the budget was for those particular items, correct? So if we say it's, 548 million, but it's 77 million underspent, you're saying that when we go back and look, like salaries is $303 million and change. Benefits is 108 and change. Purchase service is 105 and change. So really, I think the most apt comparison, and maybe I'll be able to make that better, is to look at what the actual, instructional thing, and then the 100 is for salaries to see, was $340 million budgeted in instruction 100, and you spent 303 in instruction 100. And so that might be the more apt comparison, and I'm more than happy to struggle to find that, but I think we got a caucus request from somebody down the line. So.
Kevin, Shay promised she has one
more
question
question?
she'd like
Okay.
to ask before
Okay.
caucus.
She asked for a
I'm not sure who at the table can answer this, but I'd like to know, for a first-year teacher, what is the total compensation package?
Benefits and everything, yeah. Just wondering what the dollar.
Will, can you answer that?
I can give you rough numbers just off the top of my head. So,
Perfect.
48,250
Right.
is minimum base salary. So that would be 0 years of experience, recent college graduate. I believe we're now up to, and don't hold me to the exact numbers, but about 10,000, 9,500 something for benefits. And then your FICA Med, FRS, so that would be the stuff that goes into retirement, your Social Security, all of that kind of stuff, is about another 20% of your base pay.
And then what about FRS?
That would include
that's included
yeah,
in
that's
there?
included in that 20.
Perfect, that's all I
20%
needed.
roughly.
See, one question.
Okay, thank you, Shay. All right, we have a call for a caucus. I believe teachers are in D and district. We have your own room for caucus as well. Okay. I'm not even going to ask for a time limit, but can you give me just a 15? Okay, we'll try that. It looks like we have everybody back, so if everyone would please take their seats. Thank you. And TALC, you called for the caucus, so would you please give your report?
So there we go. There's a big delay. We just met and talked about kind of the things from the budget, and Jonathan was able to do a little bit more of a deeper dive with us before he had to leave and discussed kind of, and we're kind of interested in a framework with the 16.5.
Thank you.
You waiting for me, Donna?
No, I'm waiting for Amy to finish. That's okay. Not a problem. All right, go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, similarly, we discussed the budget conversation that we had before the caucus and the responses Amy provided and the questions that TALC had asked.
Okay, thank you. All right, where are we going in the discussion now? Do we need to have more story, or does someone have options or ideas to put up? Kevin?
I know one of the things, like, again, despite the disagreements, we do have a common goal to solve some problems, and I didn't know if the district had kind of a framework around starting to solve those problems or not.
I'll respond by saying that when we left last meeting, I believe TALC mentioned that they would get together and come up with some ideas. So the fact that you're asking me,
we've had a hurricane and a COVID diagnosis.
so
and my
we're
chief
probably
negotiator.
in similar situations.
We may be.
So that leads us to where? Anna?
So just one thing that I wanted to add to our story was looking a little bit at the presentation that Amy provided, and she had said that the bonuses from 22 and 23 were a maximum of, it was like 7,425 or something like that. So thinking to, a bonus, knowing that a bonus doesn't go into our base salary, seeing that number like it is makes me think, wow, like that's $7,000 that I don't have this year, or over the last 2 years. Along with student loans starting back up, I think that's a very big concern for a lot of teachers that are already working and living paycheck to paycheck, which that's all stuff that we know. But that was kind of a piece that I hadn't necessarily thought of, because student loans just have been out of mind the past few years. So that's just something I think we also need to consider as we move forward.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have additional story to add? So if we're not ready to, Shay.
I think I have an idea of this number, but how many teachers are we currently short in the district right now?
It's been fluctuating. I would say it's approximately 200.
Okay. Which means that all of us in a school, in most schools, let's rephrase that, are doing some type of coverage at this point, right? Okay. Well, they're agreeing, so I'll just go with that, a yes. I had asked before we went to caucus the approximate compensation of, and I just went with a first-year teacher. Mathematically, we came out to about 68,000. So at 68,000 times 200, I do have a figure somewhere. That's about $13.6 million that we're currently saving in payroll. How many teachers would we end up short last year? About the same. And how long does it take to hire a new teacher, going through running the ad, interviewing, all the processes that it takes to?
It depends, because the person has to provide certain things. So it depends how long it takes for that person to provide their diploma and certificate, paperwork, get fingerprinted. If their fingerprints don't come back clear, we then have a process to go through for that. So, I mean, I would tell you roughly 30 days.
30 days, so about 4 weeks, we're saying. So in our quarter ends October 13th, which is what, 5 weeks? So the chances of filling 200 positions before the end of the quarter is probably slim to none, right?
Boy, I want to say no.
Well, we all want you to say no because, you know, people don't want to cover classes every day. People don't want to split classes. I mean,
if 200 people walked in tomorrow with everything in place, ready to go, and you could hire them, they would most likely start, their first day would most likely be in the second quarter. And I think that's where we're going with this.
Yeah, I'm not sure of that, Jill. I mean, if everything ready to go, I'm looking at Heather. I think we could get them up and going pretty quickly.
I'll do the math on that.
Just doing some math on the fly over here.
Used to be a math teacher. So just with my quick math and just going off the basis, let's just say second quarter, that's about $3,300,000 we would save first quarter in compensation for 200 teachers. Would you agree or disagree? And that's saying they're all first-year teachers. I do apologize if we could have people with experience, but I mean, my understanding is that if they're 14 years or less, we hire them as a first year.
Can you repeat what you're saying?
I said that was based on them being first-year teachers with my math.
What's based on that?
That $3.3 million I was just talking about that we're saving first quarter.
Oh, because the positions are vacant. You're
Positions
right.
are vacant, correct.
Okay. I don't know. I didn't see your math. Yeah. And I don't know why you need an affirmation from me anyway. You can make your statement.
You know, I guess my statement is, at the end of the day, is that we can show all this money out there. And granted, we don't know, and Amy did a good job of explaining that instruction money is for lots of different things. It's not just salaries. I'm going to go in my opinion. I'm not going to speak on behalf of the bargaining team, but I feel like there is money out there that can be spent. And if we're saving $3.3 million in first quarter, we're not what? I'm trying to understand. And I know you can't do this, but this is something that you guys can take back to the school board. And I'll leave it at that.
All right. Carl?
Okay, while I can appreciate the numbers, the numbers still that's a gross amount, because there are expenditures, of course, with coverage and everything. So that's the math part of me doesn't allow me to just to sit and say it wouldn't necessarily be pure, because there are expenses and things of that nature. So yes, there would definitely be a difference in those numbers, but it wouldn't be quite to that point because of the other things. So yeah, but anyway, I just wanted to, because when I hear numbers coming out, I've kind of been quiet and listening to numbers, but I'm kind of like, okay, wait a minute. Yes. Correct, and that would be accurate. But I'm processing them so fast and knowing that that's not right. So, okay then, let's go ahead, Donna.
Okay, thanks, Carl. Anybody else? No? No more questions, no more story. Okay. Is there district, anything we need to cover, or do we need to call it an evening?
I'm hopeful that we can make a commitment to each other that next session we come with options related to the $16.4 million. Can we just get a, yeah, sure. You can ask.
Would you take the mic, please? Thank you.
Can you meet with the board about the over budgeted salary dollars?
Amy?
If I understand the question is, you're asking to meet with the board regarding additional authority?
Yes.
Period.
Yes, authority period, but authority specifically around the over budgeted salary dollars.
And when you say over budgeted salary dollars, are you referring to the vacancies that we currently have this year, or are you referring to something different?
I believe there was a significant over budgeting in salaries from last year. And there is also some savings this year for at least the first quarter. So I don't care what you call it. I'm asking if you'll meet with the board to ask for it.
Well, and I asked that question because there is a difference, right? There is a difference because basically last year was last year. This year we have a budget based on what our expected revenue is, which includes any fund balance, or that is unspent dollars from last year. Unspent dollars, which is different than over budgeted, but unspent dollars from last year, all of those things have been accounted for, or when I say accounted for inside of the budget for this year. That doesn't mean that everything is going to be spent or not spent. So what I'm saying is the analysis that I would do, if you're asking for the information, would be about, so what is it right now based on the budget that we have right now and vacancies right now?
So when
last year is done.
Okay.
We're talking about this year. So that's why I just felt it important to say that, because plans for this year have been set in place. There still are future considerations to be thought about, which also need to be planned for in advance. But if you're asking based on kind of going along with the conversation that Shay was just having about current vacancies and what that may mean inside of the budget, then I think it's just important to understand the ask that you're asking us to take back.
And I guess I just need to work out in my head the general budgetary process. So the state gives you $2.1 billion. Let's say roughly 2 billion, 1.9. The state gives you a fixed amount of money for the year, correct?
The state gives us some money, a fixed amount of money for the year. Okay. Yes, that's not the only sources of our money.
But I'm saying, so you get money from the state and other sources to budget and spend.
We do.
So when you file the annual financial report, it shows what you actually spent in total.
In the previous year.
In the previous year. So 22-23 budget reflects the AFR filed or online today to be filed after the meeting tomorrow night, correct?
September 11th is when it's filed.
Okay, right. And so if you show that you spent $1.5 billion and they gave you $2 billion for 23-24, does the state say, wait a minute, You only spent 1.5, here's 1.5, or does the state go, you know what, you've got some growth, here's 2.1 billion?
The state says they give us the allocation based on the
And
calculation
so if there's
of
a
the
difference
FELP.
between the allocation and spending, where does that money go?
It's inside of fund balance.
Okay, so there is money from last year that was allocated and not spent in the fund balance that could be used to pay things this year as a bonus. Because again, we don't pay reoccurring funds with non-reoccurring money, even though there's an argument to be made that if you're $35 million a year over budget or under budget, for 10 years, it's essentially reoccurring. But we're gonna live in the world where we're gonna hire every teacher and not gonna have to worry about this. Because I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't want anybody getting coverage money because that means we're fully employed.
Understood.
Right? So there is money that was left over that was not spent that was put in the fund balance. And that money is essentially just hanging out like we have reserves for TALC. It's hanging out in a money market account. And I can spend it this year if I want to, even though it was part of last year's unspent budget, correct?
Could be, but not necessarily.
So if you-
something happens
so
with
you
the fund
could-
balance, it is either allocated for something is specifically for the next year, or restricted for a certain reason, or it's unrestricted.
So can you ask?
Three different.
All right, so
four
there is
different categories.
there is unrestricted money in the fund balance that was unspent last year, correct?
There would be unrestricted dollars in fund balance, yes.
Okay, so can you ask the board from that unrestricted money from last year if there is an interest in paying bonuses this year using that money?
Okay, I understand your question.
Thank you.
All right, would you pass the mic to Anna, please?
I'd hope you agree that is an important question to ask. I mean, we have to.
Yes.
Okay, so yeah.
Go ahead, Anna.
Okay, so in years past, when we would get to discussions around compensation and we would talk about the compression issue in the market, you know, we do the market rate adjustment for maybe like, oh, year 13 this year needs X amount of money. We used to see all of it in like a spreadsheet with like a line graph to where we could see where those like dips and hollows were. Because compression is something that all of us at this table can all agree that has become an issue. And it's something that we would like to address. And I think it's helpful. We used to have those charts all the time to where we could see like, okay, if you have 14 years, we need to do something here. Do we have information like that available? Can we?
I see heads nodding, so.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anything else? We've had 2 requests for information. Are we ready to, Will?
I just wanted to add to kind of what Anna was saying for people on the bargaining team that are newer that are maybe not familiar with the graph that she's talking about. And I think where that graph came from was when we were addressing compression issues that had happened previously as the state continued to put funding towards increasing the minimum base salary, you know, from $37,500 on up. And what we realized after listening to some of the story at the bargaining table and then anecdotal reports from people, you know, who would call into HR or to payroll with questions, you know, and kind of add on the normal stuff that about, you know, the difficulty in being able to pay rent, to afford a mortgage, that kind of stuff, you know, on a teacher salary. It was that we kept hearing from, it felt like certain people a little bit more or more vocally. And what we were able to do with that graph was tie it back to kind of what you're talking about. There was a rut, and it was absolutely, there were a group of people that were disadvantaged because of when it was that they were hired into the district in that succession of events. And those were the people typically about 2001-ish hire dates. And again, this is going back a few years, so that was what it was at that point. Those were the people that were hired in when there was no step, hiring freeze, loss of tenure, the recession, all of that. And all of that, I think, combined with the fact that then 10 years into their careers, a lot of them are no longer single people. where they maybe were recent college graduates, and a teacher's pay when you're living by yourself isn't that bad. But a teacher's pay when you have family obligations and other responsibilities, it doesn't go as far. That's what allowed us to really focus in on that. And I think as the two bargaining teams to come together and say, okay, we've got to do something about this trough. And like you're saying, it took us a couple of years of sustained effort to be able to address that. And I think having the graph help people to be able to visualize what it was that they already have kind of internalized and feel, so that it wasn't just about, the cost of milk, because that's a symptom of the problem in a lot of ways. And so, again, I think we can get that information to you, but wanted to share that background and kind of use it to highlight the importance of some of the story that comes out with the interest-based process.
Okay, thank you, Will. Anybody else? All right, it is 6:45. You ready to call it an evening? If nobody else has any requests or questions. All right, see you in 2 weeks. And the Caloosahatchee, I hope.
Thanks, Donna.